of our effort, but still we will do what we think is right in accordance with the Constitution. Madam Speaker, as Senator for Busia has said, all of us have taken an oath to defend the Constitution, and that is exactly what we do. I have just come from Kiambu Police Station, Madam Speaker, where I had been arrested, purportedly on charges of unlawful assembly at my own offices at KICC, Madam Speaker. And it absolutely breaks my heart, some of the comments that have come from the chair of the Energy Committee, knowing that I'm a very strong member of that committee. We are working together to make sure that we reduce the cost of living for Kenyans. But even as we do that, Madam Speaker, I believe it is important for those of us who believe that the constitutional rights that we gained through blood and sweat are protected. I hold the position, in fact, Madam Speaker, that every single appendage that God gave you, if you do not use it, it will fall off. Madam Speaker, this is how we as human beings lost our tails. We used to have tails. And because we were not using those tails, we no longer have tails. In my view, constitutional rights are the same. Constitutional rights are the same. I'm a student of evolution, Dr. Khalwale. So even these rights, the exercise of these rights is what gives them life. In my view, Madam Speaker, we have given our position as a minority on these amendments. And I want to confirm here that, in fact, we as the leadership of the minority will be proceeding to court to challenge these particular amendments. And we know that that is a forum to ventilate some of the issues that have been raised by my colleagues. But allow me to just disabuse the notion of some of my colleagues that, in fact, this is something other than what it is. Because, Madam Speaker, in our view, this is not an opportunity for us to actually put members of the cabinet to task. It is a cosmetic change we could have done way better by just going the long constitutional route to actually give the Senate powers over these cabinet secretaries. And I'm going to demonstrate how. Madam Speaker, my colleagues who think, and I like what Senator Esi Okenyuri was saying, but I hope that she listens to us also, that, Madam Speaker, in fact, if you look at the rules that were passed by the majority side, because the record of the Senate indicates, although yes, it is now a decision of the Senate, the minority, in fact, did not participate in that decision, and that's why we are taking the matter up. That, in fact, the rules that we have bound ourselves to in this particular process allow, first of all, for very serious censorship from the Speaker, that, in fact, the questions that you want to put to a cabinet secretary can be denied by the Speaker. Those are the rules that we passed here. Number two, Madam Speaker, if we have complained about the speed of the responses that come from the committees, and yet we go again and bind ourselves in a period of time under those rules that were passed here, that the responses of the cabinet secretaries can only come after 7 days, then we are defeating the point. Madam Speaker, also, as politicians, we know that the news cycle is incessant. The news cycle doesn't stop. Stories develop every day. Kenya is always on the move, Madam Speaker. By the time you are asking a cabinet secretary a question from 7 days ago, that matter has long moved on to something else. And if really the intention of this House was to try and have quick responses on matters that are relevant and current, then really this particular rules that you have passed have tied the hands of the Senate in terms of the speed with which you can get answers for your residents. And I can see my good Senator Lelegwe is here. If there are issues in your county, security issues, there has been an attack on a school, even if you get the CS here, by the time he comes here, Madam Speaker, that issue will have moved on and you will have fresh questions, which you can't ask him because you know you have already submitted these questions 7 days earlier. Madam Speaker, we also have this position that, in fact, the rules, the way they have been framed, they actually have been framed to stifle debate further. For instance, they say that you cannot ask a cabinet secretary about something that you heard in the media. Madam Speaker, I'll give you a classic example, and I wish the senator for Uasin Gishu, the chair of Health Committee, was here. Just a few weeks back, I read in a newspaper that there was this policy. It was actually a secret policy in the Ministry of Health that was going to restrict labor migration in health services to other countries. the media are partners in the democratic process, Madam Speaker. Many things have been unearthed. We as individual citizens do not have the sort of investigative tools or the tools that are available to the media to always know what is going on in the country. Madam Speaker, if you have read today's papers, there are a lot of revelations about some of the things that are going on in the country. If I had not read that report in the newspaper about that health policy, I would not have used the platform of this House to now get clarification from the Ministry of Health. And indeed, I attended sessions of the Health Committee where the stakeholders came. The Ministry of Labour confirmed that they are not aware of such a policy. It is a policy in the Ministry of Health. The stakeholders confirmed to us that yes, it is a secret policy in the Ministry of Health. They had actually been given some circular, and that they in fact had not participated in formulation of that policy. So you cannot ban or outlaw asking questions by members from things that they have seen from media, and yet these media are very critical partners in democratization. I want my colleagues to know that you cannot ask a cabinet secretary a quotation from his own speech. You can't ask a cabinet secretary a question about a quotation from his own speech. And in the context of what is happening in the country right now, Madam Speaker, if, for instance, we had the CS of Interior before us next week, and I have seen a quotation, for instance, him saying that he needs to bring amendments to the House to, review the Public Order Act. As a senator, I have already gagged myself by the rules that I pass myself. Madam Speaker, I believe that our colleagues need to understand and appreciate that, in fact, this thing is not what is being meant out to look like. Lastly, another point, Madam Speaker, the restrictions to the nature of the questions. The restrictions to the nature of the questions. This is why I'm telling my colleagues, you will not be able to achieve what you think you are achieving with these rules. There are 11 restrictions to the questions you can ask the Cabinet Secretary. And the most interesting ones, Madam Speaker, first of all, your question cannot convey a point of view. I can't give say, Bwana CS, from the way I see things, the deployment of KDF together with the police creates command problems because of the relationships of the two entities. I can't do that. Madam Speaker, I like to speak with linguistic tools. You have gagged me, you have said I cannot use irony. I cannot use imputation, inference, opinion. How am I going to debate? You know, maybe other people have capacity to speak devoid of these linguistic devices. But I actually depend on them. This is how I became a lawyer. This is how I became a member of parliament. Madam Speaker, I cannot seek an expression of opinion from the CS. I cannot ask the CS for defense or for interior. In your view, Bwana CS, have the measures you've put in place to protect the people of Baringo been successful? I can't. Because this is how we have tied our hands, in such a way that, in fact, this is something totally useless to us as a House, and I think that we have unnecessarily tied our own hands. Lastly, Madam Speaker, there was something that the Senator for Busia alluded to. Under Article 125 of the Constitution, the committees have been given power to enforce attendance of witnesses. That in fact, if a cabinet secretary fails to honor the invitation of a committee, you have the power to summon him. You have the power to tell him to bring documents, to compel production of documents, and examine him under oath. I have not seen a provision here that will allow us to examine the cabinet secretary under oath. If he comes and he refuses to take oath, and I have seen in our committee at PAC, there are governors who came and insisted to be shown what is the provision that requires me to take an oath. Luckily for us, we have the Constitution to hide under. Article 125, we tell you, you have to take oaths so that the things that you're telling us are truthful. And the reason why people take oaths is so that there are consequences to the things they say, Madam Speaker. So if we have not provided that these cabinet secretaries can take oath, if we can't summon them, if we can't summon documents from them, if we can't compel their attendance, you have provided in these standing orders that all we can do is to start motions of censure. Madam Speaker, why would we as a House take away powers, constitutional powers that have already been granted to committees of the House, and yet the entire House is not availed those same tools? So, Madam Speaker, for me, and having said that we needed to respect the structures in our constitution, their separation of powers. Other institutions are defending their turf. We are the only institution of the three arms of government that are giving away their role in the democratic space in this country. I saw it the other day, the courts very strongly pushed back against an attempt by some people to bring in the courts in terms of enforcement of Article 37 rights, and they said everybody has their role. Why are we as a parliament, why are we as a Senate, Madam Speaker, ceding ground? And you know, every single ground you cede is going to be taken up by another arm or body. Luckily for us, because we still have an opportunity to ventilate these matters before the courts, we are hoping